Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Richard Miller, and my co-host is still wondering why he didn't get the nod for the subs bench today, Dr. Luke Gledall. How are you doing today, Luke?
I'm good, though I did actually travel down to Exeter, and then I got to the hotel and had to turn back again, so I'm a little bit disappointed. But,
was it because you forgot your shinnies?
It was. I'm really hoping as well that I think I've still got the receipt for the boots as well, so I'm going to take those back.
Well, you pushed the boat out, didn't you? You went for some Mondials, so you were going for it.
I really was.
You can have a
style over substance.
How are you well, other than your obvious disappointment at being so near but so far to the first team football at Sheffield Wednesday?
I'm pretty good. I've got over the jet lag from flying back, obviously, to the sunny beaches of Calgary. Yeah, I'm doing okay. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. You know, it's cold. It's a bit miserable. It's winter in the UK, but you know, it's fine. I think let's pull the nose up and get out of this immediate tailspin with a bit of
breaking hoo-hoos.
The first bit of breaking hoo-hoos. Everybody has COVID. Every single day.
I wondered when this was going to happen, because it kind of seems like a law of averages.
Yes.
It seems like something that would definitely happen to Sheffield Wednesday, on top of it happening to, let's kind of look over the list, Man City, Aston Villa, Middlesbrough, Derby, Rotherham. It's happened to a lot of football teams. Fulham, were Fulham also affected as well?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's probably within a pandemic something that you think could happen. And then you'd probably think in having a workplace where people still can't, Bannon can't be pinging balls over Zoom, unfortunately.
No.
They cannot work remotely, so it kind of seems like something that would happen. And then you're playing in a team sport, and those environments are very kind of close together for the nature of practicing and working as a team. It kind of feels a bit like a ground for something like this to really spread quickly if it got into one of those situations.
And I think also like some of the things that were supposed to happen early in the pandemic, like when we had the Project Restart, there was a lot of talk of we're not going to have like big celebrations and it's going to be fist bumps, not hugs and kisses and all that sort of stuff. And that has not been the case. I think increasingly it just looks a lot like normal.
Don't you find it funny for the fact that early pandemic, obviously less cases, everyone's being very stringent, very on the ball. This is something very new. People are willing to go ahead with restrictions and new mentalities. I mean, I don't know about you, Rich. Remember those heady times where we were encouraged to wash our hands for 20 seconds?
You refuse to wash your hands at all now. Is that the case?
Yeah, I'm just scratching my balls all the time, basically. No, but I'm basically just kind of saying it's interesting that you have greater restrictions from the beginning. Those things kind of get relaxed to the point, and then people get complacent.
Yes.
So I'm not sure. And then that kind of accelerates over, this virus being we've never really seen a full winter with the coronavirus.
No.
It's pretty much coming to the Western lexicon at the beginning of spring. So winters are purportedly a time for greater spread of viruses because people spend a lot of time indoors with other people with poor ventilation. So,
and it's too cold to wash your hands.
Yeah, that's a good excuse.
Sometimes you have to wee on your hands for warmth to keep the chill off.
Well, the thing is, it's like we can't wash our hands because they're in fingerless gloves that we're heating around a brazier. Yeah.
A trash can fire out in the...
trash can fire, exactly. Exactly. Because we all live like cartoon hobos in the crumbling economies of a pandemic economy.
Well, the thing is, as well, in the UK, we're now seeing the wonderful effects of announcing that everyone can go hog wild for 5 days at Christmas, then 2 or 3 days before Christmas going, oh, what I said about Christmas, by the way, guys, don't listen to me. I'm mad. I'm drunk half the time. What I really meant was just three households for 1 day. I didn't mean go mad and have like 5 households of a week, bring all the livestock indoors. I didn't mean that. I was kidding you on. Totes japes from old Bojo. But we are now starting to see the bite of a Christmas period where some people will have gone along with the loosened rules, which still opened things up for another burst of a fresh burst of pandemic goodness. But also some folks will just have gone, well, I'm not changing my plans now, so they will have done the loosened tightened rules. And I think as well, footballers, they may be particularly susceptible in some ways, because a particular, like people who are spending time away from their families, maybe alone at Christmas, maybe is more likely to happen with a foreign national who's not got the links, not got the ties within the country that somebody who's a native born sort of Brit would have. So you're maybe more likely to go to someone else's place or have a bigger Christmas with a group of people who are in the same position as you. I think that's one of the things that's happened in sort of Manchester and London. We've seen several players getting sort of slapped on the wrist for hosting get-togethers and things. But
right, and you also there's also a new probably breed of kind of subset of people within this, which essentially are footballers are young people by and large, and the people who may not kind of have that mentality. You've also probably within that situation, if you're a professional footballer, you could well be a character of someone who maybe doesn't really hear the words no when people say no to you very often.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things a lot of variables you can sprinkle onto this shit salad that we've got.
And a hell of a lot of free time for players.
Yeah.
By and large, their day is done by lunchtime. So a lot more time for your mind to kind of spiral out of control and, make it maybe even healthy to try and spend some time with other people. So I think there's the kind of societal. We've got this new strain which seems to be even better at spreading, like a new brand of margarine. It's even better at spreading, and you then got the Christmas fun times, and then the sort of the odd existence of a footballer. All of those things combine to make a situation where we're seeing several pockets, and we're probably going to continue to see several pockets of players out, coaches out, and in particular for Wednesday, we've ended up with pretty much, it seems like the whole kind of front bench management team have caught the virus and had to go take themselves away from the rest of the team. We've closed the training ground. We haven't been told about players. We haven't been told about other members of staff. It was interesting looking at the team for the FA Cup tie. There were certain players missing, and we don't know whether that was a choice, whether that was a COVID thing. We did only name 4 subs, so the presumption is that this is what we had today available and COVID free. So that means on top of the coaching staff that we know about, there's also Tom Lees, maybe Kieran Westwood, but maybe that's an injury thing, maybe Che Dunkley, but maybe that's an injury, maybe Liam Palmer, Elias Kachunga. I'm sure there's others that we know that Windass is injured, but Izzy Brown is another one in that sort of list. So we don't know, and it could easily be the fact that maybe it's the masseuse at the club or the person that does scans on muscles, or it could be anybody that is the kind of patient zero in that scenario.
Sure, especially after we've spent all this time and effort to just completely shit all over the lifestyles of many a Sheffield Wednesday player. Basically. We basically called them an entitled bunch of so-sos, young
Playing
playboys.
FIFA when they should get a real job. But it could, they could be several independent cases that just happen to have clustered together. It could be one person didn't know they had it and maybe didn't have symptoms, and lo and behold, they kind of affected lots of people. We just don't know what the situation is. But the attempts to close that down have resulted in this odd situation where we go into a match without, well, the manager, who's already a caretaker, is out. His assistant, the assistant to that person, and I think maybe another member of the sort of frontline coaching team, all out. And essentially we've got kind of the schoolboy team being managed by the tea lady. So fun sort of situation to be in. But I think before we sort of touching on the cup tie, but I think before that, we've got something else to sink our teeth into news-wise, and that's a bit of good old hearty speculation about who the next manager might be.
Exactly.
The first of many disappointments of the Tony Pulis reign was that we were robbed of the opportunity by one of our classic Sheffield Wednesday late night announcements. We didn't get the chance to spitball aimlessly about a group of foreign men that we know nothing about, and we are going to grab that with both hands and by its own clackers. So
you could say gusto. But then people will probably hear what little pithy remarks I have to say, and the tone of my voice, and the general appetite of a man who's done a podcast for about 18 months on a very underwhelming English football team.
Well, speaking of underwhelming and English, wait till you see this list of managers.
There we go. So just as a kind of a bit of housekeeping before this, Rich and I are going through, currently as it stands and as it is published, they might have to free up some pixels and delete some photos to reorder this, as per what Superhound says in Peep Show to Jez when he tries to get his name on that football video, if you remember. So as published, as it speaks, this is 8:30 p.m. GMT, Saturday, the 9th of January. Just a real timestamp when we're doing this. The sackrace.com. And we are going to start talking from Eddie Howe. And just to kind of mention, we're really taking the cream off the top of 33-1, aren't we, Rich? Because basically, as we found going into this, pretty much anybody is 33-1 for the next Sheffield Wednesday position.
Yeah.
Your postman, your lover, your grandma, all are 33-1.
They are up there. They are. They're in the running, like so many. But we're drawing a line at the first manager to come under 33-1 odds on any of the sites that they list, and that gives us Mr. Eddie Howe. For me, Eddie Howe is someone that I would not mind at all being our manager. I just don't feel it's in any way likely.
Sure. I mean, this is like. I mean, also, I've mentioned anyone is 33-1. So just to kind of bring, as Rich said, 888 Sport have Eddie Howe as 20-1.
Yes.
Paddy Power went with 40-1 and 33-1 at Bet Victor, as we've mentioned. But I mean, it could also be someone fictional.
Yes.
Ted Lasso could be on here. Mike.
Well, some of the people.
Is it Mike Royal? Who's Mike Bassett? Is that his name?
Mike Bassett. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be a fictional character. It could be the long. Rest in peace, departed MF Doom, Daniel DeMille, the enigmatic rapper who has a mask. We could bring him back from the dead, and he could manage Wednesday, perhaps. All in the views and eyes of the English bookmakers. But to go back on topic, Eddie Howe. Yeah, I don't think he's someone I would like him. Sure.
Yeah.
But
there we go.
This is a bit of a kind of drunken conversation between Rich and I, and be like, Alison Bree's interested in having sex with either of us. Yeah, sure. It's not going to happen, is it?
No. We some of these names we're not going to give. Some of them are going to be given pretty short shrift, I would imagine. But the next one up is someone that was really quite strongly rumoured last time round, and he almost made Big Tone seem like a nice option over, because by his own uselessness. But Phil Neville of England ladies Lionesses fame, someone that I would absolutely not like to see managing Sheffield Wednesday Football Club.
No, and again, he's there purely for the basis of his name, isn't he? Really, because I mean, if you had someone with the same credentials, you were not going to see Hope Davis, on the list to manage Wednesday.
No. So there are some weird names in here. So the next one up is Carlos Carvajal, the old flame. Other people might have different opinions on this. I would welcome Carlos back. I don't know what he'd do with this team. I'd be intrigued to see, but it feels very unlikely when he's at a team that is attaining kind of European competition level football. I think Sheffield Wednesday becomes a pretty massive step down for him in that position. Would you have Carlos back, Luke?
I don't know.
He's not going to do the things that hurt you again. He's promised.
I don't know what way there is for him to come back. And then addition to the fact that he's doing very well for himself.
Yeah.
On a better, bigger stage, I would say. Yeah, it's purely for the lack of imagination of saying he was Wednesday manager before.
Of course. Sol Campbell. We've talked about Sol previously.
We have his agent's doing some good work, isn't he?
He's had a number of short, unsuccessful periods at a number of clubs. I mean, if we wanted to try the Gary Monk experience again, we could maybe do that with Sol Campbell. A slightly different take on the same Gary Monk model. Next up is Ryan Lowe, and I know this is someone that you've got a little twinkle in your eye for Lowy. You think he's aging well? He's grown into his features.
How much
what
of
is
this?
It you like about Ryan Lowe?
What does I like about Ryan Lowe? It's a classic. Who doesn't like that classic hallmark of ex-Wednesday player who's doing well as a lower league manager? Who is linked with a club? Who doesn't love that romantic comedy story?
Watching on and saying, we can really derail that promising career of yours, young man.
Exactly.
It's sort of depressingly quite far out in the running. Again, he seemed to be somebody. I would say the beginning of this list is people that felt like they were maybe quite in the running before Tony Pulis got the job, and they're getting mentioned again because they were in that conversation. But it doesn't feel like they're particularly close this time round.
No, that really takes the shine off their second bite of the cherry, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah. The next up is Darren Moore.
Is that purely because he's a local manager?
Presumably. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time we've kind of cocked a snook at one of the local teams and pinched their dinner.
Exactly. I think Doncaster Rovers are doing okay in League One, aren't they? They're doing fine. But I mean, he's not setting the world alight, so I do find it a strange. I don't know. I can see the working for the mentality for these people, because unfortunately it's these connections in the market where people really don't have much of a clue.
I would say that would be the sort of marked theme of this, really, is that nobody really knows, and anybody is potentially worth a mention, because if you don't know, then you don't know what you don't know.
I think there's more odds of Ted Lasso.
To paraphrase Rumsfeld, we don't know what we don't know. Next up is Mark Hughes, who is, I'm sure, a perennial. He is on every potential next manager list for every team in probably the top 5 leagues in Europe and probably the top 3 leagues in England. But he hasn't managed a team since 2018, and I don't feel like
Wow.
we're the project that would, rouse the dragon, as it were.
Yeah,
I've got
his stock is still probably a bit too high for Wetton. I don't think it's someone I'd really want.
Yes. Yeah.
He's a perennial Premiership struggling manager, isn't he?
Yeah, he was. I mean, his best time really was he sort of brought Man City to the cusp of the current era, didn't he? He didn't quite. He was sort of Moses, he led them to the edge of the promised land, but he was not allowed to come in himself. He was sent back to the desert by God. And in this case, that is the money men, the oil money behind Manchester City Football Club. So we're now in a run of managers that I won't pretend to know anything about. So we've got Bruno Lage, who was previously at Benfica.
But was also an assistant.
Carlos's number 2, is that right?
He was, yeah. So I think Carlos has seen a couple of his backroom staff kind of serve his time as assistant manager or within that backroom staff, and then make the leap out of the nest to go do a managerial career on their own.
They've Villas-Boased him.
Exactly.
Similar success.
Exactly. So, but he's done pretty well at Benfica.
Supposedly he left.
He left Benfica. I think he had quite a good time at Benfica, though.
It looks pretty good.
A 67% win rate.
Yeah, that looks really good. That's that's winning almost all the time.
That is winning almost all the time. 67 the time it works all the time.
Exactly. Then we've got Paco Gémez or Gémez. I can't remember which one you say the J and which one you don't. In Mexican Spanish you do one thing, and if in Spanish you do the other.
Yes, I'm aware in Brazilian it's Jose, isn't it?
Yes. But he's an intriguing. I think I've seen several people sort of. He's a respected coach in Spain. Quite a brave, almost a sort of footballing theologian. He really strongly believes in playing out from the back, almost at any and all cost. So would be kind of a fascinating.
He also
candidate.
believes in a suicidal approach of throwing everything at the opposing goal. And then has been on the end of some very large spankings as a result. So, in conclusion, could be perfect for Wednesday in this situation.
He's also got a kind of soul patch gone to seed, in that he's got kind of like the middle part of a goatee without any other part of it. And I don't know how I feel about that. Outside of maybe kind of a supervillain, it feels a bit much, I think. His sort of overall career win rate are pretty, substandard, 33%. He's only getting it done a third of the time, which I don't know if you remember. Bruno Lage almost all the time won games. So, for comparison's sake, he's losing out there. We've then got Vladimir Ivic, who was sacked by Watford during December. Sacked just a couple of days before we gave Pulis the shove. Also, a man that has enjoyed a 60% win rate in his managerial career.
How effectively did he do at Watford? Because Watford was his chance.
Yeah.
And seemingly, we live in this world. We very much don't. We live outside this world where being fifth in the Championship isn't too shabby. But then if you're at the helm of a football team that's with a giant squad that people say is going to piss the league and giant parachute payments, then it's not acceptable. And
also, you're one of the teams that's in that position that, like Lance Armstrong in the peloton, you would also piss hot if they were testing your urine for doping. It's hard to say, isn't it? Because Watford, teams that have a disastrous season, there is an element of picking up the pieces and trying to. So it's not an easy task to turn a ship around. And we have seen several teams that have immediately gone to actually being worried about getting relegated the next season. I mean, one of the things that is sort of intriguing, we don't talk, we're not engaging in the Schadenfreude much of looking across the city because, we've got quite enough misery and gnashing of teeth to do on the Wednesday side of the city. But one of the things that the talk of United keeping Wilder on next season because he's the best placed person to turn things around. I mean, in some ways, I can totally see it's sort of a level-headed, sensible choice, but it's not going to be an easy task to a team that has lost almost every week for a full. By that time, it would be a full year. It's not a tap that can just be switched back on to suddenly be good. I mean, Huddersfield had a pretty good squad by Championship standards last season, and immediately they were in trouble at the bottom of the table, and they spent the whole season sort of just about keeping their heads above water, but nothing more than that. So that's the thing with Watford. So fifth is quite good in a way because it can be disastrous. But then looking at that squad, man for man, probably should be doing better than fifth. And I think we sort of predicted they would be better than fifth by the end of things. So I think it probably counts as a minor failure. But if you get yourself into the playoffs, you can get promoted. And then it doesn't really matter where you finished in the table, to be honest. It's getting yourself over the line. But what do we think in terms of a perspective? I don't know anything about how Watford were playing, to be honest. I'm going to hold my hands up and say, I'm not studying tape on Watford.
It sounded like he's a very defence-minded, he's a very pragmatic defence-minded manager.
So the sort of guy that Chansiri would like to bring in and then tell him to play attacking football.
Possibly.
Sorry, I'm being a bit facetious there, but
No, but and you are being facetious, but unfortunately you're kind of not far from the truth, are you? That's the problem.
Yeah.
See, you were thinking you were making a joke there, Rich, and you did, and I do applaud you for that, but it could well be correct. It could well be a thing that is real.
Could be right. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off mid-flow. So they're defensive-minded.
Apparently he's very, very much, what's the word? You know how like Jos Lukai came in and basically said, well, you're not having this, very authoritarian on the training ground. And he looks a very imposing character.
Yes. He looks, let's not mince words, he looks like a baddie from a Bond film.
He does. He looks like a vampiric mob boss.
Yeah. Also, in terms of, we've had several players frozen out or maybe frozen out. He seemed to immediately fall out with Troy Deeney, who has kind of been the heart and soul of Watford for about 10 years. So,
yes.
Make of that what you will, really, I guess. But let's move on to someone who has been very closely linked to the job at previous points in the running, but is now out. The best odds you can get on this site are 16-1. Thorsten Fink.
Thorsten Fink's an interesting one because it's not too damning a resume for the type of managers the prominent managers that we're linked with. This usually seems to be a pattern of this is quite a maverick European manager who's, they've had success here, but on recent times they've really fallen on bad times. So that's why the stock has been lowered to the point to be, scribbled in pixels across a betting site for the next odds. Seemingly maybe someone who might have agent links. I mean, there's quite a few of these people. In terms of foreign managers who, you could probably do a bit of digging and find out that they're probably connected with some of the advisors who are advising Wednesday. But it seems more safe an option than quite a few of the other ones, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
There's that overarching feeling about that.
Yeah, sort of a mixture of some quite successful stints at decent clubs, some fairly middling stints at others.
But never particularly an embarrassment.
Basel and Hamburg, decent sized clubs. So Grasshopper Zurich. it's Austria Vienna, which is, I guess, is not Rapid Vienna. So I don't know that they're the. I think they might be the junior of the two Vienna teams. But I kind of pretty much 50-50 on his sort of win percentage. An interesting person to be linked with, I thought, and kind of fits the mould. We've had half of the managers under Chansiri have been managerial merry-go-round Brits, and the other half have been left field scattered CVs from the continent. And of those types, he seems, he sort of fits a mould in a way. So it didn't feel particularly outlandish, and doesn't seem like it would be a terrible choice. Although it would be a real shot in the dark. We don't know a huge amount about him and how he plays. We're on to a little bit more familiar territory in the next run of managerial prospects. So we've got Danny Cowley.
Danny Cowley, who...
What it might have been.
Exactly, who talked to Chansiri when we hired Monk. It was heavily touted and rumoured. There were some talks, but we weren't the team to poach him and his brother from Lincoln. That turned out to be Huddersfield, and then hilariously, it was the much like buttering a piece of toast on both sides. Or I remember a TV offal bit that was done said, well, if buttered toast lands on its buttered side down, and a cat always lands on his feet, if you butter the top side of a cat, it'll just keep rotating around. So it was a difficult situation to look at for a game because the new manager bounce could be in effect for both teams. But we absolutely did them because Huddersfield were really in a difficult, really crappy situation.
And fair to say, not a great... I mean, they did not enrich their CVs in that move.
No, but it seemed a bit like, I kind of imagine if, in a political sense, if you were kind of part of a political party vying for whatever the political control of the country would be during a bad time, you probably might say, it's not bad if we lose this one because it's going to be a bad environment to be in. I think Danny Cowley was purely just a custodian to see them bottoming out.
It's ended up that way, hasn't it? I think the thing is there was a lot of hype around them.
Yes.
And what has happened is that shine has been sort of tarnished. But I think you're right. I think in a way it was a kind of hiding to nothing. It was a very difficult post, picking up a Huddersfield team that had been almost record-breakingly bad the season before. A lot of egos, a lot of big earners who aren't earning the price tag that they've managed to land for themselves.
But also, how generous was it for a situation and a project like Lincoln, who previously kind of a very much a football league side, for them to sink out enter into the ether beyond the fog into non-league, and have a project where Danny Cowley and his brother had all the time and resources to build a culture. And it sounded like everything you've heard from Lincoln was very much part and parcel and fabric of the town and of that culture.
Yeah.
Really, it seemed like a lower league side welcomed them with open arms, and they built something that, I mean, really, they built the hallmark now of a top third-tier side, essentially. Lincoln seemed to be there and thereabouts now, after they departed.
You could almost make some comparisons with him and his trajectory with someone we've already talked about in Eddie Howe, because Eddie Howe brought Bournemouth up through the leagues. He took a kind of exciting proposition step up by going to Burnley, and it was a complete disaster. And then he went back. The Bournemouth sort of welcomed him back with open arms, and he took them on a tremendous journey. But he was never able to kind of replicate that spirit that brought them up with the new recruits. And the worry is, if you dropped Eddie Howe into a situation, a sort of, for want of a better word or phrase, a basket case club like Sheffield Wednesday are at the moment, would he be able to make anything out of it, or would he just completely, throw his arms up in the air and just, I can't do anything with this. There's nothing if I can't pick players, if I can't I'm not in charge of who comes and goes, then how can I reliably build a culture that then good football comes out of? Intriguing. We've also so sort of moving along. Another kind of familiar face in terms of English football is Marco Silva. So he had a pretty successful time with Watford, and he was at Hull as well. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
So he got kind of poached, didn't he, by Watford from Hull?
Mm-hmm.
And then he got the Everton job, but didn't really have the impact that he was supposed to have at Everton. But again, I would say somebody, on this list of some people you don't know anything about, some people you know a bit about. I would not mind seeing Marco Silva rock up as the next manager of Sheffield Wednesday. I
wouldn't be too upset. I don't think. Yeah. I think that would be quite a palatable kind of appointment in terms of history and seeming approach from him as well.
Yeah, and you'd hope some links within the game that could maybe grab in a kind of surprising signing or so.
Mm-hmm.
If that still happens in this day and age of databases and scouting videos and whatever else. That's probably like they're like, we don't do that anymore. It's all AR and Nigel Pearson. That's another man. Nigel Pearson is as low as 6-1 on 888 Sports. But he's
serial.
Doesn't want the job. He's always
a serial Wednesday managerial candidate. Nigel Pearson, because of his previous links, alongside the slightly too old previous Sheffield Wednesday Nigel, and there's Nigel Worthington as well.
Yes.
I must say, I think
Megson was that man, wasn't he?
Megson was always the man for a very, very, very long time. So, I mean, it's good to know. I mean, this is a comfort of us getting older, Rich, is that we don't have to see Steve Cotterill on the Sheffield Wednesday managerial odds list. We don't have to see Ian Dowie propping a place up here. But Nigel Pearson has he's been managing for quite a while. He's had quite a fairly decent resume. Maybe he was a little bit unfairly treated at Watford.
It felt that way, didn't it? Although when you look at a 16.7% win ratio, you sort of think, maybe it wasn't so bad to get rid of him.
Yes. Maybe Rich and I have been the ostriches, which he has called journalists previously. Maybe there's always a thing about this, the statistics, and there's a feel, there's a perception. So I'm fully aware that we all have different opinions, and you can all completely just run over mine in your car. You can run it over, and then you can reverse back over it, and then you can go over it again, and you can just keep repeating that a few times. So I get that. So I don't know, Nigel Pearson, it'll never happen. But he'll always be someone who will clod up these managerial lists.
I don't share that. But I suppose one thing that's, I don't know whether it's worth saying, but I feel like I'm saying it now, so I'm just going to keep going. But I don't share the kind of feeling that he is some messiah. We're awaiting the day when...
No.
But do you know what I mean? There's almost...
Yeah.
Quite often you see posts on social media like, there's one man who would be perfect for the job. But, and they're like, I don't know. He's not pulled up, many trees in his career. He's not been a wonderful manager anywhere. I'm not dismissing his achievements. He's done all right almost everywhere he's gone. And he's got quite a varied CV. But I don't know. The football tends to be pretty dour. He is a very dour man, and I don't know.
But he's the next ex-Wednesday superstar captain, though, isn't he?
That's the thing, isn't it? That's what it's about more than looking at anything to actually do, to do with the reality of his situation. I just think it's always cast as this, like, if only. Like almost the one that got away.
I know. I know. But
And
it's
just
also
like, yeah, but she did have that hair lip. Do you know what I mean? No, sorry, that's an awful thing to say. Right, let's go on to Jose.
No, I know.
Moraes.
No, I know because this is the problem because it's like, and I mean also like the bookmakers list is very much listening and wanting to the average punter, and there are
Yeah.
people who seemingly think that I don't know, real life is Star Wars. Like
It's the sort of thing. It's the person lying lying awake in bed next to their wife of 25 years, thinking of their like primary school girlfriend, and like, oh, if only I was with Jessica. And you're like, you just don't. There's so little you know about Jessica. Jessica could be absolutely awful for all you know.
yes,
You might have
exactly.
been a terrible couple. But it's just like this kind of, I don't know. There's this pining for what you can't have. And
Exactly.
Like, yeah, in his distance.
It feels a bit like what you're saying with that. Remember, I think Broad City did this excellently. That Abby had a thing for that guy. What was his name?
Oh yes, the guy that
The
lived on the
long
same floor as her.
fascination with it, the long crush, the long fascination, the dreamy soft focus that it was put into, and then she got with him and found that he was really into pegging, and it kind of it kind of broke all of the fascination. So that's the thing. It's like we can do this, we can go down this road. But I think there's very much a difference of opinion across Wednesdayites. I think there are some who would definitely love to see Nigel Pearson, and I think it goes to probably us at the more end of the spectrum, who'd be like maybe not vehemently opposed, but maybe be like, this is going to break your illusion of who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fair takeaway. Pearson's into pegging. So Jose Moraes.
So we talked about, we think Pearson's into peggings. I think Moraes is into leggings. There we go. That's the link.
So a man with a wildly varied CV. He has been at many a club, about half of which seem to either still exist or have a Wikipedia page. One of them is called Geown Book Motors. And one of them is called Barnsley. Not an exciting person to be linked with, I don't think, from what we know about him.
I remember, I think you were like me, Rich. You remember that time you're in Sheffield and you thought, should I buy a car from Guy Salmon or John Book Motors?
Yes.
We've all had
that experience. Then you remember that John Book Motors is a professional football club based in North Jeolla province of South Korea.
So he's a big, to be serious, he is a big agent link,
yes,
isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And also previously, to really look into his previous assistant manager to Jose Mourinho.
Yeah.
And a few stints. I think he spent quite a long time with him at Real Madrid, and I think a few other places as well. And then has made the transition to management, which has been mixed, and some places in some leagues with some standards that we're not entirely aware of, because Rich and I are terribly ill-informed about world football. But we try. We try to lie about having a clue about these things. But
yes.
You sometimes wonder about having great win percentages. You're like, well, what's the standard of football and what type of resources did John Book Motors have?
Yes, yeah.
Maybe it's a really good car sales place. Maybe they've not got many lemons.
Well, they won K-League 1 in both of his first two seasons. I'm just giving you the knowledge that I've got at the top of my head. So, I mean, they might
sure. One thing we do know is that
Barnsley
fans said he was one of the worst managers they've had in their recent history. However, though, with a win rate of 20%, that's twice as good as Tony Pulis. So the only way is up, ladies and gentlemen.
And that is the worst of all the clubs that, as we say, still exist and have Wikipedia pages that he's managed. That's the worst win percentage that he has at any club. But his time at AEK Athens was only slightly better. So a kind of again an interesting person to be linked with. It's weird that we've got the kind of Barnsley, his little dalliance with Barnsley. He wasn't there for very long, to be fair to him, but a 14-game stint or whatever it was to be the worst manager you've ever had. That's quite an achievement. 15 games it was. 15 games of which he won 3.
Beautiful games. Of which 20% is free. Yeah, 3 games.
Yeah. I haven't heard this next person linked at all, so I'm not quite sure where this one's come from. But Rene Weiler, is that one that's run past you at all?
I think I've heard his name, but I'm
probably.
Yeah.
He
looked. I think he ticked the box of foreign manager number, letter Z for us to be linked with. So yeah, I don't know. It could be an agent link. I don't know a great deal about him. Fairly all right for the last 5 clubs. Has win rates ranging from 42% through to 77%. And his last appointment.
Yes, 77% is that's right up there, isn't it?
I mean, maybe if the championship is exactly the same as, let me check my notes, the Egyptian Premier League, then he'd be a great appointment.
Well, it's known for its similarity to the championship, isn't it? That's what they say about it.
I'm sure Mido has played in both.
It's Africa's EFL Sky Bet Championship. Welcome to the home of Africa's EFL Sky Bet Champion. We're not even going to pretend to know anything about him. This next guy, I've heard of this chap. He doesn't have a picture on the site, which makes me very suspicious of him. But Neil Thompson. Do you know him at all?
I think he's existed within the existing coaching staff at Sheffield Wednesday.
He does have a bit of managerial experience. I didn't know that.
He does.
He did so well at being a manager that he became a coach and I guess an assistant manager again. That's maybe a bit unfair, but it's not a glowing record. It's York City, Scarborough, and Boston United, and winning just over a quarter of those games.
How much do you think Neil Thompson kind of reminds you of maybe someone to be probably damning? And, this will probably be funny for Rotherham United fans because they could well overtake us. But, someone like Paul Warne.
Yeah.
Someone who's a quite competent lower league manager.
I thought you were going to say Steve Evans for a second, and I thought not at all, actually. It doesn't remind me of Steve Evans at all.
Sure.
Well, I think there's the kind of the old adage that, possession's 9/10 of the law. He's got the job at the moment. He's making a blooming decent fist of it. Mm-hmm. Even in his sickbed with COVID, he manages to oversee a pretty comfortable cup win away on a boggy pitch.
But what
would it take? How long? How much further would this sort of run need to stretch for you to start to think we should give it to Thompson?
I think it would have to be, for some reason, not quite as long as Stuart Gray's reign, a caretaker, because that's like 11 games, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
That was a very, very long time, to the point where Mandarich just kind of forgot to make a decision on anyone else. Really, we've got Coventry and Wickham next. What if we beat them both? If we beat them both and he's still hit the club and we haven't made a decision on anyone else, then yeah.
I'm intrigued by what what it would take, the hypothetical of what it would take for him to be.
The interesting thing is, and I don't know, he's the man who is seemingly the one who is in the lead of the bunch.
Yeah.
So, but there's very much a feel of, we're all coming together. That's, I think, the big thing for the unison and the unity right now. And it feels a bit more of possibly a joint effort. Maybe that seemed a bit damning to Neil Thompson. But I mean, we also had that period before do you remember that last period we had of Bullen, where it felt like the expectation was we are going to give Bullen a chance at this?
Yes.
and it didn't go well.
No, it didn't. No, in fact, it went well for 2 games. He won the first 2, didn't he? And then lost the next 2. Is that right?
I believe so. Yeah.
And it was the manner of the losses really that were quite damning for Bullenuk. It was sort of aimless flailing. Acted out by 11 men on a football pitch. Someone dropping something and then trying to catch it.
Yeah, it could be that he has the swing of momentum and it could keep going. I'm really not sure where Chansiri is at mentally for this,
No, I suppose
which
the thing
is
oh God, sorry.
Which is quite scary.
Well, he's a great and unknowable being, isn't he? Talking down into his laptop screen. It's just intriguing to me because this is not an inspiring list of managers. So I think we should finish it off, and then maybe it's worth talking about Thompson again potentially at the end of once we've spoken about the game. But I'm almost in a position where he's already sort of done as well. Well, he's already done better than Pulis. Within another 2 or 3 games, he might have already accrued almost as many points as Monk did. Do you know? So I'm like, we've been so badly served with sort of managerially this season and last, or this year at least. Let's say this year, 2020, and now 2020. We were so poorly served by the manager choices we had that it's not difficult to look a lot better than that. I think it's just a sort of strange position. I'm just, potentially you could be in a position where from the next 3 games, if we got 7 points out of that would be the best run we've had. Well, it's already in some ways the best run we've had since Christmas 2019. But it would make things feel a lot more rosy around the club. We won't know his limitations, or the limitations, as you say, this maybe is a bit of a team effort. We won't know the limitations of that team until they are stretched. But the players seem to be playing for them in a way that certainly wasn't the case for Tony Pulis. I think really wasn't the case for Monk. I think so. There's that aspect.
Yeah.
And with the young players, you'd hope he's got a good insight into the talents that we have available, because he's been involved at that youth level as well. So potentially you've got someone who's got the confidence and the enthusiasm of the current first team, and a bit of an insight to get the best out of what's available beyond that. That's not a bad choice potentially to have, but and I guess you've always got you could just drop in a manager at any point if it starts to go sour. But yeah, it's an intriguing sort of prospect. Moving beyond Thompson, we've got Gus Poyet up next, who is another one that hasn't managed the team for more than 2 years, and has a pretty patchy record.
It's been a long time since his stock was high with Brighton, right?
A long time, yeah.
And also, in regards to that, how much was Brighton just a good place and time? Brighton also seemed to be kind of looking at like the politics. I'm very aware of. I thought it was funny because I thought it was. I remembered a time in my 20s when I was into poker, so I often recognized Tony Bloom,
right?
Who's the very kind of mildly Quentin Tarantino resembling poker player who would often be on the TV screen, and aware that he was actually a very, very rich kind of man who runs like a sports analytics betting company or something along those lines. I think it is. Whatever his business is, he's a very wealthy man, has basically sunk a lot of money into making Brighton a very attractive opportunity and spending a lot of money to do the right things at a football club, which has basically led to, I think, a number of years kind of struggling or bothering or being in around that kind of championship, playoff picture, including us when we beat them. And then eventually they got up and then seemingly beginning to cement themselves as, a Premier League mid-table side. So how much of his previous success was thanks to that environment?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, because if you're part of that project as you say, there's money being thrown at it. There's kind of a logistical thinking beyond the manager. So you are the kind of showpiece head of the train, as it were, but you're not the guy in the engine room necessarily. So yes, you get some of those successes, but not all of it.
And he was there for that transition from a League One side to a Championship side, right?
Yeah.
And then the person who's kind of been the figurehead of the next step of that was Chris Hughton.
Yes, who seems like a much better manager.
Yes.
Although he is really struggling at Forest right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think your initial just laughing and saying no is the absolute right answer when it comes to Poyet, and maybe a couple more of these candidates who are depressingly short in terms of the odds available. We've got Mick McCarthy, who's fresh off the back of a whopping, I'm just going to double check, I think it was 5 games. He's just been managing Atinuiu in Greece. And weirdly, it's not loading. It doesn't want me to know how long. Oh, no, he managed a whole 8 games, actually. Sorry,
wow.
Take it back.
Wow.
2 wins, 1 draw, 5 losses. Do you know, sometimes the loss percentage would be better than the win percentage in terms of looking at these figures, because that is a hearty number of games to lose. I would... Why is Mick McCarthy such short odds? Who would want him? We've just done this with Pulis. Surely he is just... They're the same man. The same gruff, boring dinosaur. Mm-hmm. It's the same... It's a different man in the same Barney costume, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
He's a grim Yorkshireman instead of being a grim Welshman, but that is about the stretch of difference. Or am I wrong? Would you welcome a Mick McCarthy, Luke?
No, I think there was a brief period where I think he, under very kind of reductive, difficult circumstances, had Ipswich playing quite well above their station until the point where he left, and then I think Ipswich really sunk down to where they should be in the world, in the rankings. Unfortunately, I don't think they would. I would not view them as a third tier side. I would probably view them as a second tier side, probably alongside, unfortunately, Sheffield Wednesday. So I think that's harsh, but I think that was probably the time to think about Mick McCarthy. I don't think the time to think about Mick McCarthy is now. But again, this is betting lists. This is a bookmaker doesn't have much imagination, and also the punter doesn't have much imagination. Yeah. So someone's put a $5 on him, and he's riding high in the charts.
Yes, I do take your point. Just to bring some sunshine and cheer to this list, we've got the comedy candidate, Joey Barton.
Again, I think...
Don't get him near your cigars. It's Joey Barton.
Again, someone has... I think there's been someone must have done a bit of agent talk. Joey Barton's agent must have put something out there. Someone put him on their list at reasonable odds. Someone's put a $5 on him. He's 2-1 on 888 Sport.
Well, he's just walked out of his, or been sacked by Fleetwood under somewhat of a cloud. So there's also everybody's friend of putting 2 and 2 together and maybe getting 17.5. He's a nutter. And I don't know why. We're already enough of a circus. We don't need the added nuttiness of Joey Barton. I cannot see how having him. I know he kind of cleaned up his image vaguely for 5 minutes. He started quoting the Smiths and writing long posts on some blog. He's a head case.
Yes.
He spent a football career being okay and also borderline murdering people. He stubbed a cigar out in the eyes of a youth team player. He's had brushes with being called racist at various points. He's you name it almost, he's done it. And now he's a manager. I mean, it's only one step better than watching somebody like you. You don't have the joy of this, Luke, but watching somebody like Martin Keown, who spent a career just thumping people and being a ginormous bully, watching him pretend to be a normal human being in a TV studio as he talks about football. And Souness as well is another one in this. Guy's an absolute vicious madman who now sits in a suit and talks sensibly about things. And Joey Barton is just, he's that, but he's on the sideline rather than in a TV studio. Please no. But 2-1 on 888 if you want to jump on. Oh, this maybe is the most depressing name on the whole list for me. Chris Coleman. Please no.
Yeah.
Although I was amazed by his... I would like Chris Coleman, in terms of getting a cameo or having a life coach, if it was Chris Coleman's job to wake me up in the morning and give me a pep talk, I'm there for it. Watching that Sunderland documentary, the man has just reams and reams of self-belief, a tremendous positive mental attitude, but he's not a very good manager. We need someone that gets more out of a team than they have. The only thing he's ever achieved as a manager is going, do you know what? I think I'm going to play Gareth Bale.
Yes, yeah. Possibly riding the coattails of Gary Speed before him.
Yes, R.I.P.
Also, he was a man where his stock was really high with Wales. And then he went to Sunderland.
It's one of the maddest moves in football ever. It's one of the worst chess moves.
Yes, exactly.
It's the equivalent of having your opponent in checkmate and throwing the board in their face and leaving the room.
I would have thought my version of that, Rich, is I'm going to take the knight and stick it up my nose.
Or another orifice. You might as well go for the anus in that occasion. Come on. The final man on the list, I think probably a consensus favourite for the job the last 2 times it's come up. It's Paul Cook. It's the permanently sore-throated Scouser, Paul Cook. What do you think about it?
Former podcast guest.
Yes, of course.
We go way back with Paul Cook. I mean, I really wish you would have got a chance to talk to him, Rich. It was frustrating that when I got to chat to him and you went to make yourself a sandwich.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm glad I stopped doing that, but then it's weird that the guests have dried up since.
It's funny, yeah. It is strange. But seriously, Paul Cook. I hope he will just kook, won't he, at Sheffield Wednesday? Because I think he's the most palatable option. I think his stock is high, but I think also previously. It's weird because he's also got he's got that notes. If we pick up this glass of Paul Cook wine and bring it to our nose,
yes.
I'm getting certain notes of ex-local manager with Chesterfield.
Yeah.
It's I think he ticks a lot of boxes. The only thing that maybe concerns me is maybe his previous relationship with Josh Windass, possibly. Because I've heard that's not so good, if rumours are to be believed.
That's what what's been circulated.
Mm-hmm. But I think he plays decent, kind of attractive football. He did very, very well with the Wigan side. That maybe I didn't see him and think was so great, but maybe there was a fortunate nature with that he had a really good bunch behind him. But again, it just seems like the most logical option, and I think it's the one that I think an overwhelming majority of Wednesdayites would be. Yeah, that's not a bad appointment.
I think you're right. I think the football seems to be fine. It's not. Again, we have become accustomed to very watery, thin gruel as Wednesday fans of late. So I think it will be an absolute tonic if we're in the position where he is the manager. It will be sort of night and day with some of what we've seen previously. He's had success. I think he's got 3 promotions on his record at different clubs. I would say I think the caveat is that Chesterfield, Portsmouth, and Wigan all had money when he was there, when he got them promoted. But you've got to do the job, and it feels like he does the job that he's there to do more often than not. I mean, it's quite unfortunate what happened last season, and I think he was kind of a victim of the wage rules that we've already talked about in League One. I would be pleased to see him as the manager. The only disappointing thing, if he is named a manager, is why on earth he wasn't the appointment last time. But who knows? It's been the reign of Tony Pulis is such a bizarre little blip in the history of Sheffield Wednesday Football Club. But yeah, interesting to see all these links. I think for me, I would like Paul Cooch. I wouldn't hate Thompson being given a bit of a run, but that would quite quickly change based on performances. But I'm impressed with what he's done with the team so far. There we go. Well, I think we've been through all the runners and riders, folks. There's some mad people at 33-1. If you want to just look at a list of random footballing personalities, just go for it. This is the list for you. Robbie Fowler, Steve Clarke, Rafa Benitez. These are people that will never ever be manager of Sheffield Wednesday and have no interest in it either way. It's just
sure. Well, I mean, if you want to get some better odds, maybe you could request a bet for Kanye West to be the next Sheffield Wednesday manager. Maybe the corpse of Jeffrey Epstein would be the next Sheffield Wednesday. I don't know. Anything incendiary or foul or fantastical, put down. Maybe just make a donation to your local bookmaker to keep them going through these really tough times.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's a nice thing, isn't it? We've given the bookmakers of Sheffield two goes at it this year, and in that way, it's a shame that Chinsiri's not being celebrated as a champion of local business.
Exactly.
Right. Should we talk about the game of football that happened this weekend, Luke?
We probably should.
Well, so the main victim of the localized COVID outbreak at Hillsborough and the Middlewood Road training ground was the bench. Very light of coaching staff and light of substitutes.
They had to disinfect a lot of the bench, so people could sit on the bench. That's why we only took 4 players.
Yes. That's a very slim bench, especially in these days of 5 subs. That's it was cool, really, to see. And amongst them, they're all youngsters. And am I right in thinking that Rice hasn't played first team football yet, or was it just Arat Thompson making his debut?
Arat Thompson and Ryan Galvin did definitely.
Well, yeah, Ryan Galvin made it. But he got the start, didn't he? He got the nod from the off, which is fantastic. So the kind of outfield team, for want of a better word, doesn't look massively different to what we might expect for a league game. Alex Hunt is it's rare that he's a member of that midfield, but it has happened previously in the season. But we've got, we had Harris, Patterson, Reach, Bannon, Pelupessy, kind of all almost ever present. Same with Odebajo, but then quite a lot of youth in that first team as well as the bench. So the 3 of the back 4 were Wednesday youngsters, with Brennan and Shaw as the centre backs and Galvin, as we said. What did you? I mean, it's hard to know. Obviously, Exeter did a team playing in League 2. It's hard to set your expectations for these sort of games because you don't know what the quality of League 2 football is. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair, yeah.
We can make a guess, but we're pitching a kind of a Wednesday team made up of people that we're not particularly familiar with against a team of players that play at a level of football that we're not particularly familiar with. So it's kind of hard to know just looking at team sheets, what to expect from the game. But Exeter started brightly, didn't? I was pretty worried from those first sort of 10 minutes or so. I don't think Bannon ever really got used to the pitch.
Yeah, there seemed a very kind of temporary kind of grip on midfield from our perspective, especially, funnily enough, maybe damningly so, that, we seem to go with a 4-5-1 kind of mentality today. Do you think if it was so interesting with the lineup that it felt to me a lot like, that game you play as a kid where you draw like the head and then you pass it to your mate, you fold it over and pass it to your mate, draw the rest. Like, it seemed like the top half was like a young skateboarding whippersnapper in the top half, and the bottom half was like pinstripe suit trousers below with nice shoes. Because it's a very young kind of back line, inclusive of the more experienced, maybe Adebayo and obviously Wildsmith as well. But then from the forward, it's all first team.
Yeah.
Pretty much first team, notes of first team to the point of Alex Hunt. Obviously a lineup ravaged by injury and COVID, and FDB still can't get a game.
No. I'm
surprised they didn't just put him below Eric Thompson just to make a fine point of it.
Yeah, I just I don't. It's strange with Fizzy, isn't it? Thankfully he did get on the pitch today, so I'm pleased for him on that. I just thought, Bannon. I don't think he ever really got going today, although he did obviously play a part in the first goal, but he just gave possession away so often. And that he started off the highlights of the game for Exeter, really. Most of them happened in that first sort of period of the game, that first 20 minutes. And I think 3 of them were started by Bannon losing the ball under very little pressure in midfield, just passing it away and sending them on a run. And a couple of times really being bailed out by those youngsters at the back. Also helped by some poor finishing at times by Exeter, particularly the one Jay having that header in the middle of the box where he should have gone with the volley. He's almost on his knees trying to head the ball when it was somewhere around thigh height, and he was unmarked. But I think beyond that first initial kind of panicky first few minutes, I would say it was a fairly comfortable performance by and large. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, I mean, we never particularly seemed troubled by them. It's just another Wednesday game where we're just typically kind of in the races, not particularly looking scintillating. I feel sometimes a little bit bemused and a little bit bewildered doing this podcast, because I try and be passionate and interested, but sometimes it feels a bit like we're doing a podcast about Burger King every week. And then at one point I just lose my rag and then say, look, it's Burger King. It's Burger King every time. It's very kind of very Wednesday-esque. Sometimes, I mean, we got the spoils, and I think that's probably the best we do with it. It is changed. It is much improved, and I'm very grateful for that. But sometimes it kind of feels like we are, we're going in the majority teams in an attacking sense. It's not scintillating. This game is like us attempting to slice an uncut tiger bread with a plastic fork. But we get those moments of like a weird miracle where it eventually it's kind of, we get a bit of fortune and it kind of goes through.
Well, I think one of the things that always I'm trying to sort of not make this sound as damning as maybe it is, or maybe I don't want it to sound as damning as it. I don't know, but one of the things that is surprising, it always happens with the FA Cup. We characterise it as the magic of the FA Cup, but I think what's almost disappointing as a Sheffield Wednesday fan, you like to think we've got some quality in the squad. The players that we would be proud of are people, the people we would talk to fellow fans about. Bannon's so good on the ball. He does this, that, and the other. I'm trying to think of a conversation with a human being, which doesn't happen very often nowadays. So forgive me if I'm not managing to quite capture how to speak to each other. But like the sort of person you're proud to see at your football club. Then there's sort of folks like there's the guys that are a kind of diamond in the rough on his day. He's this, that, and the other. And I sort of thought today, Reach looked a class above. Reach looked like he is significantly better. He has qualities to his play that put him head and shoulders above the guys that are playing for X. He's one of the few people that could say that today. I thought I was disappointed by Harris. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether Caprice got in his head. Maybe they've got really good fullbacks. I don't know, because they did swap over. I do think Harris struggles when he's not got the run on somebody, when he's not quicker than you. He sort of stops trying. But I just thought today he had so many opportunities with the ball and produced next to nothing. He got a couple of really crap shots off where he just sort of hit a defender in front of him. I don't know. I'm not trying to moan about the game, but I think it's just you're watching it and you're like, what I want to see as a Wednesday fan is that my team is comfortably better than a League Two team, a team that is 2 whole divisions away from them. And some players did that. I think the team performance as a whole did that. I think this was a very comfortable win, and I will build up to there's things I'm proud about and very, very happy about from this performance. But actually the senior pros I felt underwhelmed and let down by them. I thought Barry could not keep hold of the ball. I thought Patterson looked like he had his feet on the wrong way around and he put somebody else's head on. I don't remember him winning a header. He just didn't look at the races at all. And I don't think Harris was bad, but there just were moments like when he, the ball that he played through to Hunt in the second half, there was a break. He took a man on and I'm like, great, you have Patterson breaking down the middle. You've got Reach inside of him. You've got Hunt out wide screaming for it. This is dreamland for a winger. You've got which assist do you want to which goal do you want to set up is essentially the position he was in. And what he did was play a ball that was behind or too slow for Alex Hunt's run, gave all of the momentum to the defender, and Hunt did well to get a shot away. But he took a beautiful situation where slide in Patterson, he goes one-on-one with the goalkeeper. Slide in Reach, he goes one-on-one with the goalkeeper. And play a ball in front of Alex Hunt with enough pace, and he goes one-on-one with the goalkeeper. And you manage to... it's I think we have used the image before. It's a crude image, but falling in the barrel of tits, coming out sucking your own thumb is what Harris managed to do in that situation. And it sort of summed up his day that you should be better than Caprice for Exeter. You should have him on toast. You are paid multiples of his salary. You play at a much higher level. You should be significantly better, more skillful than these guys. But so that's my sort of slight moan out of the way. I won't do too much of that.
Yes,
I promise. But not much. I think so. Exeter had that bright start. We didn't have many chances, but the ones we had were good, and we generally took them quite well. And obviously the grabbing the first goal was kind of the most significant moment in the game. Really, was going and grabbing that first goal, and it was a good. Despite the fact I've moaned about him, it was quick, clever thinking from Bannon. Ball dropped in for Reach. Reach just dealt with it fantastically. He controlled it with his head, a nice little nod into his own path, and then smashed it into the near post or the near side of the goal without even looking.
Yeah, but I also think the interesting thing to say about this, I think the interesting thing about this game to be slight, and let's kind of do this around talking about this first goal. We expected more from the professional established championship players that we have on the books. They didn't probably do enough to kind of outshine the opposition.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a great bit of skill from Adam Reach. I think, though, you can probably say that the standard of goalkeeping for that level, that probably means that I think in the Championship, that would probably be another missed rude opportunity that Sheffield Wednesday would have. But
yeah, possibly. I do think the fact he didn't let the keeper set himself, but the keeper didn't cover himself in glory. I thought he looked really, for a team that was sort of nominally trying to pass it around at the back from time to time, he looked very shaky. Maybe not quite as shaky as our own shaky goalkeeper, but he didn't look particularly comfortable with that. And then also the two chances, he definitely should have done better with both of them. That's I agree, totally undeniable. But
to be positive about this, I mean, everything we needed to do, we did. I mean, it was a great ball from Bannon.
Yeah,
that's really what we expected a lot more of today, and probably let down. And Reach, another chapter in the Popular Kids model, Adam and the Giant Peach.
Yes.
So yeah, to have that flick on, to have that half volley, to kind of turn and swivel and just rifle it as quickly and as with such speed that he did, I think really shows the class of those two players. So there we go, 1-0.
Yeah. I think the other thing in defence of these players, we don't know how many of them were probably due for and maybe prepped for having a nice weekend off.
Exactly.
And there maybe was a bit of an element of, there's a bit of chugging going on, I think, in terms of our momentum at times. And maybe, I think Patterson in particular was kind of, really looked like a guy that was told, you know what, you're not going to have to run around after lost causes today. Don't worry about it, mate. So we got to half time with that 1-0 lead intact. I did message you that they must have lovely oranges down in Exeter, because we really did come out with a complete lack of momentum and just handed things over to Exeter. I think, again, Barry Bannon, I think on 3 occasions in the first 10 minutes, gave the ball away under little or no pressure. 2 of those set them on fairly decent breaks forward. Interestingly, the turning point in the second half, I say interestingly because it normally happens to us, when they made their double substitution, they never got their momentum back. And we have been that team so many times. How many games, Luke, have we been chasing? We look okay at the hour mark. We make the big, get the extra striker on, and then all of that head of steam we built up just dissipates.
Yes.
And that happened to Exeter today. They brought on an extra striker and absolutely fizzled out altogether. We then got the introduction of Fizzy. Deli Bashiru got on the pitch at 64 minutes. That was nice to see him. So Hunt came off. Not a shining performance for Hunt.
No.
Again, I don't think he let himself down, but
no.
Sorry, go on.
No, I think it's very much, and we can kind of get on to, I imagine this is probably going to heavily kind of foreshadow what we're going to say at the end in terms of man of the match. But this was very much a day for the youngsters.
Yes.
But that didn't seem to move past the back line.
No, there was a couple of bits from Hunt. So I think you're not helped if you're the third, if you're supposed to be the most attacking guy in that midfield 3, and the middle guy keeps giving the ball away, your chances to influence the game are going to be affected.
Yes.
There's no two ways about it. So I'm sure Hunt spent more time in our half kind of helping bail us out of situations than he was expected to, and he expected to. There were a couple of nice moments. I think there was a point where he was under quite a bit of pressure. He had sort of 2 Exeter players around him, and he still managed to pick out a nice pass further forward. And I do like that about him. He's very loath, sometimes to his cost, but he is young. You've got to allow for some, mishaps and stumbles along the way. But he's very loath to just lump a ball away. He likes to make sure he's passing to someone. He's moving us up the pitch. That's something he seems to have a kind of he takes on that responsibility, and I think that's a nice thing to see. He also had 2 efforts on goal. Again, neither of them were particularly good, but it's nice to see somebody getting into those spaces and not afraid to shoot, because we have a midfield that cowers away from chances by and large. So not a shining performance, but I don't think not a letdown, not a mark against him particularly, but I was excited to see him play. I was excited to see what he would do, and maybe was a little bit underwhelmed by the final product.
Definitely not the buzz of his last kind of FA Cup game.
Yeah.
Where he came on at home against Man City.
Yeah.
It was kind of literally just before the lockdown, wasn't it? Was that the last game Wednesday played before?
Yeah.
Outside of pandemic football?
I was there. It was a whole crowd of people and stuff. It was weird.
Oh, it's insane. I can't imagine.
Like breathing next to each other and singing and clapping. It was really strange.
So no, there wasn't any kind of great spark to his play. That was disappointing. I completely agree with you that he didn't embarrass himself. There wasn't a bad performance on the pitch in terms of anyone who played for Sheffield Wednesday today, but there were a lot of average performances.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
It seemed to be the real outbreak of 6 out of 10s on the game.
Yes.
That seemed to be a super spreader event. And unfortunately, Alex Hunt wasn't super spreading the ball around as well as we hoped he would.
So I think in terms of, that we talked about the game turning a corner with the goal to go ahead. I think in terms of my notes and my feelings about the game, they really started to turn a corner around that 68-minute mark. Where Shaw made an interception, he dropped his shoulder to sort of ghost past one tackle. He then seemed to have run himself into trouble and did a kind of roulette, pirouette swirl out of that, and then picked a pass out to Adam Reach about 40 yards away on the opposite flank. And he just seemed to find a lease of life in this game from centre-back that it made me think of Dominic Iorfa. It made me think of Majid Bouguera.
Mm-hmm.
It made me think good things. I had happy thoughts and a song in my heart, Luke. This was... These are ththings you want to see from a promising youngster bursting through the ranks. He had a few of those. And, well, the best of all, the crowning sort of moment for him was his involvement in the second and final goal.
I love how you said involvement, Rich, as though he had a little bit of a part to play.
Just a small bit, just a crumb.
Yeah, it was almost like maybe he could have. He wouldn't have, because he was in a bad angle and it was a difficult shot, and also it's Liam Shaw. But in that moment, maybe we could have thought that he was. I don't know. He was a future. I think as Josh Windass has put him as a Liam Shaw Ballon d'Or.
Yes. Well, I mean, Massimo Luongo can maybe give him some tips on getting on the shortlist.
There we go.
I did misspeak earlier. The 68th minute run did start with a terrific tackle, by the way, just to pay him his dues in that regard. But yeah, the goal was just mouth-watering stuff. 90th minute of the game. He's been on the pitch for all of that. He's had a pretty all-action performance. It wasn't a quiet game for the two centre-backs. And he picks up the ball just outside of our box, bursts through a couple of tackles to get to the halfway line, pushes out to the opposite flank that he started on, sucks in a couple of players, comes out of that with the ball and the freedom of the wing to himself, continues to run into the box, and then just calmly picks it out for Patterson to slot home. It was just incredible.
Just completely out of nowhere. Where did that come from?
I was just
it felt like one of those moments where somehow there was a brief kind of quantum leap body swap with, like I said, Lionel Messi. It reminded me about New Year's goal against Preston.
Yes.
Where just seemingly out of nowhere, we have never seen anything of this skill set from this player. and they bring it out in just the most. It's just the most delectable run. It's not just one moment. It's not just one touch. It is a number of them. You can replay every little bit of this, and it's just brilliant. He just has the pace and the audacity and the balls of size of Texas to just absolutely go over this. And then this is the brilliant thing. It reminds me a little bit of, we're almost a year away. I think we probably are a year away from, some of the nice things I think picked up by the kind of football journalists who follow Wednesday.
Yeah.
One of their favorite moments, I think it was maybe it was Joe Cran, maybe it was Dom Howson. One of those people said this was one of the best Wednesday moments of 2020, and that was the interview with Azaza Urahide after his debut against Brighton.
Yeah,
and that was a brilliant performance. But he picked up that real energy. That is the best thing of youth. That is the best thing about these young players who come on, because they are so G'd up for it, and they have bet wholeheartedly on themselves, and there's no fear. They don't pick up on that situation, and maybe obviously kind of buoyed on by, there's no expectation in this kind of situation. There's no kind of great crowds, which is a shame for Liam.
It is a real shame, because those two at the end, if they'd been in front of the away end, that would have been absolute pandemonium. It would have been fantastic.
And could you imagine as well if it really feels a bit like, I taught last year during the pandemic when we shut down my favorite goals. And then one of my clear favorite away goal memories was David Prutton away at Oldham.
Yes.
Where again, just pure magic.
Yes.
In that moment. And you can just feel it. And I'm really grateful that somebody did record that on their phone, the whole moment, and just captured everything from that vantage point that we had behind the goal at Boundary Park. And it would have been something it's really sad that is a really great moment. This is a really great moment so far in a season that's pretty disappointing and pretty underwhelming, and a pretty crushing time in human history. Probably a pretty sad time in our lives, and probably countless listeners as well. So it's a real shame that Liam Shaw didn't get that moment. He didn't get the moment to celebrate his first professional goal for the club he supported at Hillsborough.
Yeah.
Recently. And then he's almost done one better. Like, it's, last time he scored a goal by being in the right position and just getting a touch on it. It's just timing his runs, well, and then it's just gets something on it and it goes in. And this time he's just, I can't believe it. I still can't believe it, really.
It's interesting
just a game of such average mediocrity.
It didn't deserve the goodness of that run, did it? It didn't deserve it.
No, it didn't. Yeah. No, it really didn't.
It's so at odds with the rest of the content of the game. It's bizarre. It's like somebody giving an Oscar-winning performance in like the middle of a Wayans brother spoof movie. Do you know, like
exactly.
That's sort of what
exactly.
It's like.
Yeah.
All around is cheap thrills and mediocrity, and here I am, I'm Daniel Day-Lewis, living the part on and off set. Just fantastic to see. I think Patterson has 3 goals in 3 games now. I think he's having a dog rough game of it, but managed to come away with a goal. I think, again, the keeper probably should have done better. Patterson sort of hit it straight at him, and it still went in. But I also think Patterson is the perfect person to have alongside you in that situation, because he loves scoring goals. He loves being involved in goals.
Yeah.
And he was just as excited at Liam Shaw at what Liam Shaw had just managed to do. So that was a really lovely moment.
I think it was Matt. Like, I don't like the brilliant, beautiful thing about this, I'm going to say, from Patterson was that like he would never for a second be like, hey, this is me, because he like, we mentioned previously, we can tell that he is very enthusiastic and loves Liam Shaw, which is fantastic. It's great to see that spirit and love of bringing through and looking after the young lads at the club. But the funny that Liam Shaw went to celebrate like it was something wholly and 100% that he had done which is correct, with the fans in spirit, gesticulating to the away end. And then Patterson goes to celebrate. And if you hadn't seen what happened, if you blinked for 2 seconds after that point, where Shaw gets to it, you would have thought Liam Shaw had scored based off the celebration. It was fantastic. Yeah. What a brilliant moment in a pretty ho-hum affair. I mean, at that point, going to this, I think the thing that's so beautiful about it, especially that part of the game, what minute was it? It was like 88th minute?
They're saying 90th, so yeah, it just must have been as it sort of ticked over. He probably started his run in the 89th, and then.
I love the idea and the concept of him going out to the side, being like, "I'm running for the corner. I'm running for the psych," and then he just straight Paulie Shaws it off the young naive Grecian.
That's actually
player.
His uncle. So.
All right, I'm Paul Shaw.
They changed the spelling. In America sometimes they change the spelling just to simplify things.
I was right good in Encino, man.
He well and truly wheezed the juice, didn't he? He absolutely did. But so I mean, you end up. This is a kind of ho-hum cup tie, in a miserable winter on a frankly horrible pitch. I mean, people have complained about the Hillsborough pitch. We really get to see how the other half live when you sort of visit a St James Park with a pitch that looks like that, and you just come away. I mean, I just felt incredible. It was like. It was like I'm trying to think of I'm blanking on the name of the film with the drumming and the J.K. Simmons Whiplash.
Yeah.
Whiplash. Like I came out of that and felt like I could sort of slap God in the face. Like I felt incredible and bigger than myself and part of something. I don't know. And like that's what happened. Liam Shaw made my chest swell and made me proud to be a Wednesday fan. This was lovely to see. It's interesting to mention Irigide because it can be fleeting, and that's, I suppose, we've always to keep that in our mind. But Shaw has put together a run of performances which are really quite remarkable. You're picking up that first goal and really being the driving force of the team in an attacking sense that game against Middlesbrough, and then dropping in at centre back, needs must, dropping in at centre back, picking up a Man of the Match award on Sky, and. I mean, he was man of the match by such a distance. It's not even worth. There's nobody else in the conversation today. And also just, picking up an incredible assist. It's hard not to get excited. And I think you have to let yourself. I mean, we all know we've got hard bitten sort of knowledge, but, it's. We've talked about, relationships and lost loves and things like that. But it's like, you get your heart broken, you live with the knowledge that can happen to you, but you've kind of got to throw yourself at the next thing. And we've got to be excited by seeing Liam Shaw doing what he's doing. I mean, we know that maybe it's forever, but
this feels like a magical night with your crush, right? This feels like This is kind of it. I'm at the point of just thinking I just want to enjoy this for what it is.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what else. I don't know, because again, there's automatically the thoughts of anxiety in the back of my head of like, oh wow, are we going to, hopefully we keep Liam Shaw.
Yes.
Because obviously he's one of the many raft of players who's out of contract in the summer.
Of course, everybody's out of contract.
And everyone is out of contract in the summer, And it could happen, it could not. But for the time being, it's beautiful to see, especially in a litany and a background of Sheffield Wednesday youngsters who never reach potential or never get a chance at Wednesday.
Yeah.
To think about the players that we've, lost, and players that we've, your classic, your Jamie Vardys, the players who left and then seemingly had a decent career for themselves, or players that we hoped would be someone.
Yeah, Rory McArdle played against us today. I remember him being a youngster of some potential at one point. With Richard O'Donnell's another one that we kind of
Exactly.
buff around occasionally.
Exactly. I remembered the thing I want to say about. So, I mean, I think it was the period where I was in my kind of Wednesday sabbatical. But I thought Rory McArdle played more games for Sheffield Wednesday than just the one appearance.
I think he might have played for Northern Ireland more than for us. Like when he was with us.
Really?
I think that might have happened. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've mixed things up. But yeah, it is strange. And people are kind of like, like the mosquito at the start of Jurassic Park. They're kind of frozen in amber as well. Like, to me, he's still that promising youngster on the outskirts, and he's clearly a grown man who's had a full career at several football clubs now. But yeah, as you say, we've got to now more than ever, we've got to drink in these moments and enjoy them when they're, whilst the berry is sweet. And I love that. Yeah, well, this is a night with our crush. Tomorrow can wait. I'm feeling up Liam Shaw. Do you want just to speak about sweetness? The opposite, in many ways, is salty. Have you seen the salty dog comments from Matt Taylor, the Exeter manager?
Yes.
Oh, how pathetic!
Yeah.
He knows that the game was squirreled away on BT Sports 5. If you can enter the code and undo the buttons, you can watch something that was filmed on a potato under the red button. But yeah, according to him, we were there for the taking. And I love, the delicious salty tears. One of my favourite salty tears varietals is the keeper has not had a shot to save in anger, and we've got beaten 2-0. Do you know what that means, mate? It means he should have saved 2 goals, mate. Do you know what it means? It means he did have some shots to save. Because if he didn't have any to save, it wouldn't be 2-0. All right.
Right.
God.
Would you be gracious enough, Rich, to let me go through some of my middling notes throughout the game?
Please.
Do you get worried as a Wednesday fan, much like me, when Patterson is referred to by the commentator as our informed striker?
What? 3-3, Luke.
I know, but I'm not used to hearing those words, informed striker.
No, it isn't.
I feel like it's more likely to precede a Wednesday player who then goes to court. Informed striker, Callum Patterson.
Well, you've misheard them saying an in-court striker.
Possibly. I really felt bad for the one thing I want to say with this. I mean, I don't know about the production values of BT Sport Extra. Though I will say they must have spent a lot of money, not so much on the picture, but definitely on the sound. I felt like I got some very evocative feels. I felt like I was listening to, felt like a Hollywood production and a Foley artist, So it felt like it sounded like someone was punching a cabbage when Adebayo got hit and the ball blasted into his face. Which was disconcerting to watch for me as the viewer, let alone it sounded like
a heavy blow, didn't it? I was quite surprised he didn't have to have like a concussion check after that.
Yeah, he went. I imagine that really hurt. So, but again, this the beautiful ASMR at the beginning of this, we had the lovely lower league sound of the Exeter players coming out and the little clopping on concrete of the studs.
Oh yeah,
that's always nice. It's a lovely sound, and I loved at half time. I don't know if your footage was the same, but it just kind of stayed on the pitch for a minute or two.
Yes, it did.
And you had those really creaky seagulls, kind of the Exeter creaky seagulls at half time, over some lads
the famous
flapping.
Creaky seagulls of Exeter, yeah.
Outside some lads flapping a football to each other in the centre of the park. I mean, the ball sounds were fantastic in this. The ball hitting the billboard very loudly.
Yes.
It really, really made me feel like I was at a Sunday League game. It was fantastic.
Yeah, no, it was that was a nice feature, and I did like just sort of lingering on the empty pitch. That was sort of because it's weird the things you miss with not being able to go to football matches. And the peculiar sort of improvised, haphazard nature of halftime warm-ups is one of my favourite things. I've been to, I've seen non-league football. I've been to Champions League matches, and just seeing, human beings of various varieties of value, just kind of passing it about like a couple of lads in a park, like that does anything useful. It's really, I don't know, it just brings a joy to my heart. It warms me up a little bit.
You know how it's supposed to be very therapeutic to walk, because it's that rhythmic left-right pattern that kind of does a lot for our brain. Do you think there's also a similar thing in watching some grown adults just whack it between them from the other side of the pitch, preferably?
Yes.
Especially when they go to the 40 yards, they're like, I'm a reserve left back, but let me just have a go at pinging it across to you at the other side of the pitch.
Yes.
So,
or I'm the goalie, let me join in with the keepy-uppies. That will go well.
Yes, that's always beautiful. That's always fun. I'd like to give a toast to the commentator, who spent the halftime commentary review more in depth than I can be in detailing the highlights and chances of his game. Real commitment and professionalism to someone who values his jobs. A nuance I'm yet to see on the depths of satellite football television. So much kudos to whoever that gentleman was. Roast to whoever was looking after my grotty stream, who at the beginning of the second half decided to switch channels to some post-match analysis on some rugby game. I think it was Newcastle, Leinster, or whatever it was. I don't know. That really, really irked me.
Oh, wow. You've become so North American now that you wouldn't say that Leinster, you'd say it Leinster. Do you still know how to say Norwich properly? Or would you say Norwich?
We all know it's Norwich, don't we?
Yes. Peterborough.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, the posh who are also from Russia.
And Florida.
Florida, yeah. Was there anything else? Also, just want to say this was some highly tactical football, as we get to hear the joy of people shouting seconds from corner. Oh my word! Seriously. Apparently, I said this to my eldest brother, who said that apparently Ben Foster, the goalkeeper, shouts "winners." It's just Jesus. And I think that's it for my notes. I think really I just wanted to get those out there.
I appreciate that. That was lovely. So we to wrap up, I think it's our newest introduction. I think Starman is going to be. There's not much debate there, but we've got to make it official that Liam Shawy picks up Starman for today. For me, honourable mention wise, it would be those other young players in the back four. I thought Brennan had a really calming presence. I thought there was a couple of moments where he just took a little bit of time in moments and calmed things down that could have got out of hand. And I thought Galvin at left back didn't sort of wow or do incredible things, but we have touched on this before. Actually, having a kind of quiet game at fullback, not a mark against you at all. It's if you're noticing a fullback, it's sort of like a 60-40, that 60% of the time it's going to be for bad things, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll be in the lesser percentage of doing something good further up the field. But by and large, I don't want to be talking about a fullback at the end of the game because it's more likely to be that clanging howler that they threw in, and he just looked very solid. I thought positionally did a good job. This was there were challenges for the defence, and by and large they stood up to them, I thought. Those are my kind of honourable.
I would say the exact same as well. Actually, though, I would have a slight different focus. So I kind of went with Galvin because
nice.
I thought he had some really nice touches going forward. He did have a few moments, and a few nice touches
Yeah.
that, showed him out to be could have a bit of potential as a professional footballer. I thought with Brennan, it was more kind of understated, I want to say. So, but I think that's kind of very classy to have in a centre back, to keep a clean sheet, to be a centre back, and then again, similar to how you said about a fullback, if you've had a quiet game in defence, and you've kept a clean sheet, that's a real positive.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. Go on.
I think one final thing to say, I thought it was incredibly nice. The Sheffield Wednesday Twitter account retweeted a tweet from, I think, Stocksbridge Park Steels. So their assistant manager, Lee Thompson, is the dad of, I believe it's Eric Thompson.
Yes.
And it was really touching to see his very emotional reaction to his son having a debut game. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That really touched me.
Yeah. I will try and remember. I will make a note to myself to put that in the show notes for people that, I assume people will have seen it, but if you haven't, it will be in the show
exactly.
notes.
You might want to watch it again. There you go.
It'll be there, forever. It will have a permanence that the timeline feature that makes social media so addictive washes things away on such a regular basis. So it will always be in the show notes of Different Gravy. As we know, a very permanent fixture in everybody's life.
Exactly.
There you go. I mean, what a bizarre week. It's been strange football's weirdly, by and large, managed to look outside of the empty stadiums. It sort of behaved like it's in a different world to the rest of us, COVID-wise. And this week has really, we've felt the impact of COVID on football writ large, and in particular at Wednesday. But against the backdrop of that, it does open up these opportunities for people, and it's nice to see that some folks are ready to grab them up and make the most of them. So quite a heartwarming feel at the end of this, which I didn't necessarily expect to be my kind of feeling that I came away with when the game started, or when I saw that team sheet. So yeah, well done to the whole team. Everybody played a part, but in particular, well done to those young players. Really giving a cause for hope and something nice to take into the week ahead. So I'm going to say cheerio to the folks at home. I'm going to say cheerio to you, Luke, and wish you well.
Cheerio to you, Rich, and hope everyone has a great week.